Hello, my name is Stephen Smith, Quicken coach, and in this video, we're going to kind of go down a rabbit hole of why Quicken and your brokerage statements don't always necessarily match your 1099. So this is April, post-tax season, and if you've seen other videos of mine, you've heard me say that it is a best practice to reconcile everything. Reconcile your bank, reconcile your credit cards, at year end, reconcile to brokerage statements, and then reconcile to your 1099s. So that means if interest matches a 1099 int or W-2s match to your payroll records, and at year end, that means matching to your third-party tax documents. So if your payroll, matching to your W-2s. If you are getting interest, your 1099 interest, or your 1099 divs, and your capital gains and losses to your gains and loss tables. Now in this video, we're going to deep dive and go down the rabbit hole of one particular area. What happens when your Quicken and your brokerage statements don't match your 1099? And we're going to isolate and talk about one very specific reason, and specifically that's return of capital and basis on REITs, a real estate investment trusts. So this is the problem. Your Quicken and your brokerage statements do not match your 1099, but why it can be okay. And this is how we discovered this issue and kind of went down the rabbit hole. So we were comparing our Quicken to our brokerage holdings, and specifically we were looking to compare the cost basis to make sure our gains and losses and return on investments are accurately captured. And this is for a generic client file. But what we had here is we had Berkshire Hathaway, Boston Properties, and Capital Group. This is a value ETF. So the first thing we like to compare is the shares. And you've seen me this in other videos. And then the second thing we like to compare is the cost basis. And you'll notice the $180,333.35 matches exactly the Berkshire Hathaway basis in the brokerage. This is the online brokerage account. These are screenshots here, and this is Quicken up here. So these things match, and it also matches for the ETF, the Capital Group Dividend ETF. But there's a slight difference with Boston Properties, and thus began kind of our investigation as to why there might be a difference in that basis, even though we had all of the activity and everything accurate. And we couldn't even answer that question till we got to year end. And now we need three inputs to really kind of figure this out when reconciling our Quicken to the brokerage to the 1099. The first is the brokerage statement. This is A. This is this document right here in the top left. The second is the actual 1099 form that you only get once a year at year end. And that is disclosing the dividends and capital gains and Section 887 and a bunch of sophisticated things. And we're not going to go into all of that. A little bit of a caveat. This video is not intended to be tax advice or even deep diving into all of the rules and all of the exceptions to the rules and all of the exceptions to the exceptions of the rules when it comes to things like dividends, ordinary, qualified, Section 1202, 887, and all the other little implications and other aspects of 1099 reporting. And the final piece, of course, is our Quicken data. Now, if you'll notice in the top right-hand corner, we have bank sweep interest 3510, which agrees beautifully to our Quicken data. Interest is usually the easiest to tie out. That's fantastic. But then we have other things like why is the cash dividends of 253 different to 249 versus 259? And these are all different. We put this so that we could look at a little bit more clarity on a spreadsheet. And we said, okay, well, here is that brokerage, here is the 1099, and here's what we have in Quicken. Now, we have the cash dividends, the capital gain distributions, the partnership distributions, then we have the 1099, and then we have Quicken data. Now, you'll notice that the brokerage and Quicken data is very, very close. And we actually got it all the way close, but all the way to reconcile and understood. The difference was not pertain to this video, but it's very close because the brokerage statement is going to very closely track cash, just like our Quicken. But the 1099 reports things on a tax basis. Why the difference is with a REIT, a real estate investment trust. So what is a REIT? And if you own something like this and you're watching this video, you already know what a REIT is. It's a real estate investment trust, and it's required by law to distribute 90% of its taxable income. Now, what that means is that if the REIT makes a capital gain or interest or does a return of capital, that is treated differently to you, the actual taxpayer, because the REIT is not paying corporate tax. It all gets flowed through, which is a little bit unique compared to a regular corporation that just pays dividends, and certainly unique to a bond or a CD that just pays interest. So what is a capital gain? Well, of course, a REIT is going out and they're buying buildings, warehouses, medical office, data centers. They're doing a whole bunch of things that throw off rent. All of that, it gets passed through to you. If they sell those buildings, that's a capital gain. If they just collect rent, that's an income tax flow. Tax. If they refinance and they return capital, that would be a return of capital. So all different unique things. Now there's 5 reasons why your dividends won't tie. And again, there's even more because there's exceptions to these and there's exceptions to those exceptions. But in general, return of capital. If a REIT gives you cash, the cash can be one of these 5 different things. Often it's a return of capital, meaning it's paying you back part of your investment. And this is what reduced the basis on the brokerage account, but not in Quicken. Quicken only captured it as a dividend and not the actual return of capital that was necessary. And the return of capital is what caused our initial exception to be noticeable between the basis in Quicken and the basis on the brokerage account. The brokerage account appropriately and accurately classified the return of capital as lowering the basis, whereas Quicken did not. Quicken only saw it as a dividend and record it as a dividend. Later, we would manually go in, record a return of capital, which is a function in your brokerage investment section, and then also reduce the dividends by that same exact amount. Other reason that you might see a difference is the capital gain distributions. Again, Quicken is only going to see dividends and call it all dividend income. Same with the brokerage account for throughout the year until year end when the 1099 then specifies what exactly is the portion of capital gain distributions. Now there's lots of different distributions. There's also Section 897, which are special real estate gain rules only for REITs, which are taxed at long term. Very complex stuff. Then there's qualified and ordinary reclassification. That's a common one, not just with REITs, but all dividends. And this is kind of a gotcha. Qualified dividends is something that if you have the proper holding period, which is usually 60, but then there's 6 exceptions that can make it 45, and there's other sections to make that. But if there's a holding period difference, then it gets taxed at your full ordinary rate. And finally, there's also year-end classifications. Sometimes the 1099 will disclose, here was a dividend that was declared in one year but not paid till the next year, or vice versa. And there are reclasses on the 1099 that may not match the cash records that you keep in Quicken. So there are the 5 reasons. Now, depending on how detailed and anal you want to be about actually going into your Quicken data and reclassifying this, that's a personal preference. I do like to follow at least the holdings, at least the return of capital. I don't usually try to chase down the rabbit hole of qualified versus ordinary or capital gains or 897. For that, I just trust the 1099. So this is a little bit of a recap, but there are 3 things with your REITs when you get that cash. 1 is ordinary income, that's taxable now. 2 is your capital gains, and then 3 is the return of capital. And that's the one that cuts and reduces your basis. Whether or not you want to take it to the next degree of splitting out your ordinary and capital gains, that again is a personal question. But the important concept is that one cash payment comes in with 3 different tax identities. And you won't get to actually find this until the very end of the year when you get this 1099, when you look at box 1A, when you look at box 2A, and you look at box 3. And more specifically, you probably can't even look at just the boxes in the first. You probably have to go into the details behind the boxes in your 1099, which is, and if you're doing this, you have a pretty lengthy, long 1099 to actually get down into the detail to kind of see what's actually happening. Now, this is not a tax or investment YouTube video, but it is important to know a little bit about like how basis works. When you do receive these returns of capital, it reduces your basis. So you're actually not paying tax on this now, but it does defer essentially the tax liability that you might have when and if you sell the security. And this is a visual showing if there's a return of capital, it lowers your basis, it lowers your basis. It just makes for a longer term capital gain. So there is the mystery. Cash dividends don't always equal what's on the 1099. On the left, we see a screenshot from a broker that is basically just recording cash inflows, and it's recording everything as dividend. You'll also notice that there's prior year dividends. So these are some of the exceptions. On the right, we'll see the actual detail on the 1099 where it gets split into section 897 or, if there's, depending on the security, 1250 or non-dividend distributions, return of capital, etc., etc. Again, lots of rules, lots of exceptions. Okay, to conclude, and because this is a Quicken video, here's what this would look like in Quicken. Let's say at 12/31, you get the 1099, you've done all of this analysis, you see that there's 897 dividends, but they really should be long-term capital gain. Here's the function that I would use to convert a dividend, which is here's the minusing a dividend and adding it to long-term capital gain section. And then on the report, what will happen is that your dividend item will reduce and your long-term capital gain distributions will increase. Is it necessary? No. This is really getting super detailed, and this does not actually fix the return of capital issue. If you were to use a return of capital, you would change the transaction to a return of capital function and then do it that way. If you're a journal entry type of person, well, this is kind of what's happening. Throughout the year, you get cash and you get dividend income. It's all booked the same, but it misses the basis and it misses the tax, the nuances of the tax implications. But if you want to split it by tax identity, you have to go in and take the cash and then say, okay, what's ordinary? What's 897? What's a return of capital? What is the difference? Now, if you don't do each and every quarterly dividend, which would be a lot of work, you can also do it at year end on 12/31, which is what I do, with a reclass entry. So you're not hitting cash, you're just reducing your dividend income and you are increasing whatever it might be, capital gain or investment income, investment in a REIT income or something like that. So I hope this video was helpful. It is a detailed video. There is no question. It is complex. If you are at this level, kudos to you for keeping your Quicken file in as tip-top condition as it possibly can be. Thank you.